Chairman, we are now live.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben. So, good evening. I'm Councillor Lee Dillon, the leader of West Berkshire Council, and welcome to today's extraordinary executive meeting. We have the executive in the chamber and members of the opposition, and we also are joined online this evening by the leader of the opposition, Councillor Ross McKinnon, Councillor Joe Stewart, Councillor David Marsh, and member of our executive, Councillor Heather Codlin, who's not feeling too well, so I hope you're feeling a bit better, Heather. Before we get into the main item of the business, I think probably everyone in the chamber would just like to add their congratulations to Richard and Joe for their recent wedding. So congratulations. And I've just checked briefly, and it's still Councillor Stewart for now, rather than Councillor J. Somner. So
yeah, I just thought you didn't want two Councillor Somners in the chamber.
Very, very thoughtful of you. Thank you. Okay, we move on then to the formal business. Item 1, apologies for absence, please.
No apologies, Leader.
Thank you. Item 2 is declarations of interest. No, Madam Clerk, any?
None received.
Thank you. Okay, so we move on to the only item on this extraordinary meeting, which is the medium-term financial strategy 2024-2025 revenue budget proposals consultation. So I'll ask Councillor Cottenham to introduce the report in 1 second, but the recommendation is for the executive to approve a consultation exercise on the specific budget proposals identified in the report at paragraph 5.25, and for the executive to note the report and consider the implications for the final budget papers in February 24. So there are no decisions made tonight in relation to any of these items, whether they will go forward or not. This is just to seek agreement to go out to consult the public on those decisions. Once that consultation has then taken place, a final decision will then be made. There will be obviously time to debate the budget in full. It will come via exec for a recommendation to go to full council. And of course, then there's full council itself, where the budget will be set by all members, where there's the ability for wider debate on the budget at that point too. So with that steer in mind, members, if I could ask Councillor Cottenham to introduce the report and to propose it.
Thank you very much, Leader. I propose the report.
You're seconding that and reserving your right?
Second, Chair.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Cottenham.
Thank you very much, Leader. So hopefully everyone has had the time to go through quite a detailed and complex technical report from a financial perspective. Appreciate there's a lot of numbers within this report, but I suppose the bottom line is that the fact that we are facing financial pressure both this financial year, but also importantly next financial year as well, 24-25. And throughout the summer, we have gone through a process of a budgetary star chamber in this particular room with relevant portfolio holders, their officers, to look at ways and means of closing the projected gap, which we had of roughly around about £14 million when we first did the initial budget. So we've gone through quite a rigorous, thorough process to identify items of efficiency, savings, cost reduction, and what we have within the paper is an explanation of why we had to do this. So if you look on page 7, you can actually see from a headline perspective that we've had a significant increase in demand for adult social care, up 7% in number terms, and probably more from a headline perspective. We've also seen a 30% increase in care plans for children and a 43% increase of children in care, along with the unit cost increases as well. So we've seen inflation hitting our budget, and unfortunately, obviously, we're not able to increase our council tax, our revenue in the same proportion which the inflation which we've been seeing for the last year or so, albeit it has now fallen to roughly 4.5%. So as I say, within this particular report, we have a list of initiatives which do not require consultation, which I think is roughly around about £7.3 million worth of ideas. On top of that, we also have a review of what we call our MRP policy, which in essence, for layman's terms, is how much capital we set aside, how much money we set aside to repay back the capital borrowing, which is roughly 2 million. So we've had an external report by an expert detailing various options, and at the moment we're probably going to go for the middle ground option of 2 million. We also then have the utilisation of flexible capital receipts, which has been debated regarding the strategic review of our commercial property portfolio, and we can use potentially around about £1.5 million of that from a transformation programme perspective. So roughly we have £3.5 million of savings which require a change of policy. However, from a consultation perspective, we've got between 1.4 and 1.8 million pounds worth of savings, which do require consultation from the general public. The plan is to go to consultation on the 27th of November via the website. And I believe that is extended to roughly the 11th of January 24. So we've done quite a significant amount of communication to the residents of West Berkshire, advising them this is coming their way. We see this part of it being transparent of what ideas, and roughly there's 10 ideas which we have, which range from the restructuring of car parking fees up to 450k, and probably, as I say, which has caused the most amount of discussion, and I fully appreciate we have employees from Willow Edge here today, is a strategic review of our care home facility at Willow's Edge. So potentially finding an alternative provider or other options which we have on the table. So as I said earlier, we're looking at various options to deliver a balanced budget, because that, at the end of the day, we have a statutory requirement to do so. If we exceed that, go into effective bankruptcy, we'll have an organisation which we will lose control of. We'll have commissioners who are coming into running the council. So, as I said, it's not something which we do lightly. However, we have to find every possible lever, every possible option to deliver high quality services and make sure West Berkshire is a great place to live.
Thank you, Councillor Cottingham, for that summary. Are there any other comments from members of the executive at all? No, you're going to reserve your right, Councillor Britson, can't you? Yeah. So I'll come over. So any questions from opposition colleagues? Councillor McKinnon, I'll come to you first as Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I've got a few thanks, and thanks, Councillor Cottingham, for that report. My first question really is about the £7.3 million, so the proposals that don't require consultation at the moment. The only specific in there that we can see is the income from the solar farm. Otherwise, the report says that there are various savings from efficiency, income generation, utilisation of external funds. It's quite vague. So I have a question, actually specifically for Councillor Vickers, if he's in the room. Are any of these savings from your portfolio, Councillor Vickers? And if so, which ones? What are they?
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. I'm not aware of any savings, but we are, facing a continuing downturn in the construction industry, which is bound to affect the amount of planning fee income we're getting. Now, I know there's been an increase allowed belatedly in the planning fees that we can charge, but it's still not going to, in our view, result in a significant increase in revenue, which is what we're talking about, the money side of things. But we have not looked seriously at my area for any particular cuts, and I don't know what you might be thinking of.
No, it's just that we don't really have much information here and on what these schemes are. And I know that executive will probably have been in various budget boards, etc. You're actually bottoming out these ideas. So you're not aware of any specific savings in your portfolio. That's fine. Could I ask the same question to Councillor Lewis? Are there any savings of this?
So Councillor McKinnon, if I could just answer it in the round. This paper is because we're required to go out to consult on certain changes. we could have just included those in this paper, but actually wanted to give you a sense of the level of that versus the level of internal change that we're doing, where we're absolutely protecting frontline services rather than looking to cut 7.5 million of frontline services. These will come out in the detailed budget papers, so you'll be able to see those at the executive and at full council, and then you can ask your specific questions around, the composition of that 7.5 million.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that, Leader. I mean, just I see what you're saying. I'm going back up to the top of the report that says that the executive members here are being asked to note the implications of the report. And I'm just trying to get a sense because I don't really know what those are. Are we saying that the 7.3 million, it's a bit of a guideline at the moment? It's not a list of specific items? Is that where we are?
No, it's a list of specific items, but it doesn't require consultation. So we're bringing it out in the full budget, and then you'll be able to see exactly what that 7.5 million is made up of. I think Cottenham's got another general point on that as well.
So thank you very much, Councillor McKinnon, for your question. So in this particular room, we did have 2 or 3 full budget review meetings, and it's one of Melanie's superb spreadsheets, which has that level of detail. So we actually did have that challenge, and we do have a list of those items which make up that 7.3 million.
Okay, but not in a position to go through those right now.
No, that's correct.
Or that's not part of the. Oh, okay. Well,
the reason for this meeting, I think, is why I'm not getting.
So rest assured, we do have a list of those items. They're not.
I'll just make a point. You mentioned, and I think admirably, about transparency, and seeing it. Hopefully, you'll see where I'm coming from here, Leader and Councillor Cottingham. That's a big number, and I just wanted to get a handle of what exactly was in there. But if you're telling us to wait, then wait. We will. Can I ask you, Councillor Cottingham, one of the items relates to restructuring of parking fees to generate income. You probably know where I'm going with this. Are the fees going to be restructured upwards or downwards?
On the basis that we're forecasting an increase in revenue, these fees will be going up.
Right. I think maybe it would have been better, in the interest of transparency, to use those words rather than that sort of thing. I think it gives politicians of all sides a bit of a bad name. So they're going to go up, is what we're saying. Just to take a few of the specific items in the round: reducing grass cutting, litter, dog bins, and weeding. If the consultation, which is going to start next week, assuming executive approve it tonight, if the consultation comes back strongly against these measures, will you assure the public that you won't proceed with them?
We're not going to preempt the consultation, Councillor McKinnon. We'll wait to see what residents respond and what alternative saving proposals they might come up with as well. We're happy to hear ideas, and also from members of the opposition. So any ideas you've got, please table those. But we're not going to get into a debate tonight about preempting the outcome of any consultation.
No, I appreciate it was a what if, but not going to answer that question. If it comes back negatively, we can't rule it out.
We're not going to preempt the consultations, Councillor McKinnon. We need to see what people are suggesting, whether there's alternative provision of how it's done. It would be remiss to start double guessing and what ifs in this meeting.
Just, I'm not sure if I misunderstood what you said, actually. Forgive me, but you said it might depend on what residents come up with themselves for savings proposals. So are we saying that these items, if residents don't come up with alternatives, then these items are what's going to be left?
No, not at all. I'm just saying that we are open to ideas, just as we are from opposition members, and we'll take those all in the round when we're making our final decision. I.e., this decision tonight is just about going out to consultation. It's not about how or if these will be taken forward in perpetuity.
Okay, thank you. And last one from me. The one at the bottom jumped out at me: reducing funding for bridge maintenance. Now that sounds like the last thing you should be doing. Do these bridges not need to be maintained for the safety of the public? What is this doing in here?
None of the proposals that are in here would put the risk of residents at harm. This is off the basis of trained engineers within our highways team who were asked to look at saving proposals within their area, and we're assured that they wouldn't have put that forward if it was going to put us at too great a risk.
I know I said, I'll just come back on that very last comment from me. Thanks. I mean, I don't think I'm stupid, but it does seem to me that if you reduce bridge maintenance, there must be an attendant impact on the safety of those structures. So perhaps could I have a plea that when you do put this out to consultation, you'll explain to the public how that will be the case? Because if I'm thinking it, I'm sure a lot of other people will be as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I said too great a risk, Councillor McKinnon. There's always a level of risk with anything when you have major infrastructure within the district. But I did say too great a risk, if you want to listen to the recording afterwards.
No, I'm sure you did, but that is worrying to me.
Okay, well, thank you for your comments. I'm going to, Councillor Bowick, I think, wants to speak. So I'm going to come to Councillor Bowick next as the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Leader. Question to Councillor Cottingham. You mentioned that there'd be a transfer, or that some of the capital receipt would be used for transformation projects. What portion of the £1.3 million of revenue that currently come from the portfolio? What part of that 1.3 million will be sacrificed for the capital that you're going to invest in transformation?
So I think to summarise your question is saying if we dispose of a capital asset, we no longer then have the ongoing revenue stream, rental income going forward for the next 40, 50 years, for example. So as you know, the previous meeting we had the option of disposing. So at the moment, we've got two potential assets which we're looking to dispose. One from the commercial property portfolio, another one which we own within West Berkshire. And we have a paper tomorrow. We actually have a property investment board tomorrow, which your colleague, Councillor Wilson, has already received the actual minutes stroke the actual agenda. And within there is an item which specifies how much this particular asset, which we're looking to sell. Obviously, I can't go into the specifics of which asset it is because this is a public meeting. And at the moment, I think it's probably in the region of around about 100,000, 200,000 a year? So I'm just getting them.
Yeah.
I can give you the exact number, but it's something which, as I say, it's already built in within the budget going forward.
Okay, I'm not asking for any part two information in this meeting. Let me tell you what my thinking is. At the moment, the revenue is £1.3 million a year, right? If you dispose of the entire portfolio, then if this is a hypothetical one, Councillor Vickers, then you'd sacrifice that £1.3 million altogether, wouldn't you? So some of that is going to go on to transformation. So what proportion of the £1.3 million will go into transformation? You don't have to answer right away. Because my concern is that at the moment that income is assured, and transformation projects by their very nature are not assured. Indeed, studies show, for example, McKinsey in the across sector found that 70% of transformation projects fail. So there's a risk. Then you're putting a part of the income at risk. How much is that, and what is the risk?
Yeah, so you use the word risk. So part of the discussion which we had with our providers, Montague Evans, and this going back to the actual investment in the property portfolio from both a geographical but also the type of assets. So we've been very fortunate so far that we have 100% revenue return, 100% occupancy. What they said to us was the actual market average is 70%. If we were to fall to 70%, we would be in a position whereby we would just be about covering our own cost, i.e. the cost of servicing the debt, cost of servicing the actual interest and the capital repayment, along with having to provide a sinking fund to invest 2 million over the next 10 years to protect those assets. So from a risk profile perspective, we're taking the decision to divest, but also we're needing to find monies this year and next year to bridge that gap. And as you say, from a transformation program perspective, we've already identified potential projects which will deliver. So this may deliver, but the projects which we've identified, which we've gone through earlier today from a corporate board perspective, we believe will deliver to the benefit of West Berkshire residents, to the budget. Also, as I say, going forward, we will be saving interest, which we would be borrowing at 5.7%, 5.5%, which we borrowed at 2.5% 5 years ago for new projects. So we have a saving from that perspective. If I had the crystal ball, I think we're both probably saying, you know, if this happens, if that happens, but what we know today, this is the most prudent way which gets us to a balanced budget perspective by divesting elements of our property portfolio. We never said we're going to have a fire sale. We never said we're going to divest it all at once. It was going to be done in a structured way that we get the best value for the residents of West Berkshire. So it was never, ever meant to be sale everything at once. We will get the best possible price. And we have been in conversation with our commercial property advisors over the best way of doing this previously.
Thank you, Councillor Cottenham. Councillor Bowick, back to you, sir.
Well,
any other questions?
Well, it's just that I think you answered a lot of questions there that I didn't ask and had no intention of asking. My point, there's a lot of microphones on here at the moment. My simple question was, sacrificing an assured income, you're taking a risk with some of that money. What is it? What is the risk? But
I think he said that the numbers are in a paper that your colleagues got, which is in part 2, which obviously can be shared with you. And I'm sure we can ask Joseph to send you those papers direct as well. I think what's interesting, though, is your assumption that it's an assured income when it isn't. The tenants could end. It's currently at 100%. The market as an average is at 70%. So you probably say there's a 30% risk there. Plus the 1.3 million has never had any money set aside to create a sinking fund, which it should have been about £200,000 a year. So actually your income level of 1.3 probably isn't strictly correct. It's probably more like 1.1 million if you were looking after the buildings properly, as we now have to with a large bill of 2 million over the next 10 years.
So, so just as a final point, interest rates actually had risen from a public works loan board since the budget yesterday, and the fact that our borrowings would be higher. So we're actually would be seeing a benefit by redirecting this borrowing, which we did 5 years ago for projects in West Berkshire, rather than spending potentially £2 million of West Berkshire residents' money on assets which are not within West Berkshire. Why should we be maintaining assets which don't belong to residents in West Berkshire?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cottenham. Any other questions, Councillor Burt? No, thank you very much. I'm going to come to Councillor Stewart next, please.
Thank you. As you might possibly expect, I'm going to ask some questions about the adult social care elements of the paper. So whether that might be directed to Councillor Cottingham or perhaps to Councillor McCrow. I'm in the privileged position, I guess, in that obviously having been involved in adult social care for a number of years, what I see in this paper are things that we've always talked about, certainly with officers, because when you're writing a budget and trying to balance a budget, then you have to look at everything and sometimes make difficult decisions, as I think you referred to, Leader, at the beginning. So I just think that, and I appreciate that these are going out to consultation. So I guess my points are probably more points and questions to make sure that these things are included in the consultation and to help the general public. And I understand you also have some people there who may be employees from Willow's Edge, but to help them understand what these particular suggestions, what those implications are going to be. So if I work down the paper, so adult social care transport services funding, can you help anyone listening or watching this meeting to understand exactly who might be affected by this? So for example, I'm assuming, rightly or wrongly, that this could mean that potentially some of our residents who currently have free transport to take them to day service centres may actually now have to pay for it. Because I think it's important that we understand who of our residents are going to be affected by it. And if that's the case, and that means that potentially there are some residents who will not any longer be able to use those day services, how will we ensure, and I'm saying we because I believe we all work on this together, is that those individuals' health and lifestyle aren't affected detrimentally under those circumstances, because I know how valuable those sorts of services are for people in terms of isolation, and all sorts of other access to activities that really benefits their health and well-being.
Okay, thanks. Do you want to go through your list, Councillor Stewart, and then we're answering in one go?
I can do. Yeah, I'm never sure whether people like that or not, because
I know. I think maybe
make notes, Councillor Macro.
Yeah.
So if I come, so the next one in the paper is around Willow's Edge, a very emotive topic. I myself have been in this situation with regards to other care homes, and I understand how difficult this is. I think I'd like to understand what that estimated saving represents. So is it saying that by closing Willow's Edge, there would be a saving of £240,000 annually? I think we need to be clear on because it is a major and disruptive change potentially. It would be good to be very clear on what that particular move would deliver. And are we confident that should the decision be taken to close Willow's Edge, that sufficient places could be found for those residents' needs? Because I know that Willow's Edge have a lot of people there who have very complex needs, and we've always struggled to find other providers to be able to fulfill those needs. So I think it's something very important that we consider. And then the last one is around the restructure charges for charges in care homes. Again, it's something that that I've been involved in conversations with before. I think it would be good to understand why we think we need to increase it above the rate of inflation. So I think generally, me as a householder, consumer, a member of West Berkshire, as a resident, and all of the services that I may use or pay for, I accept quite often that there's an inflationary increase. I think it would be good to understand why we think it should be above the rate of inflation and what that rate is, because this paper doesn't say what it is.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions, Councillor Stewart. What I would say is obviously this is a summary table. We'll get to your detailed answers, but just as the premise on this is that once the consultation goes live on the 27th, under each of these, there will be a lot more information. So, for example, in the adult social care transport, in the detailed consultation, there are a range of figures in there to ask people to give their views against, for example. But let me go, Councillor Macro, do you want to answer so the one was how many and health outcomes. Then Willow's Edge was a finance question in terms of what does the saving represent, an ongoing cost or a one-off cost. And then the sufficient places, which Alan, I think you can answer the sufficient places question about Willow's Edge because it's about service delivery rather than the financial side. And then back, I think, for a financial question, potentially around the inflationary or why above inflation. Thanks.
Thank you, Leader. And thank you, Councillor Stewart, for your questions. First of all, on the adult social care transport, you're correct that the people who'll be affected will be those who are transported to our resource centres or day centres. There was a range of people affected, but most of them actually have funds provided to them under the mobility element of the can't think of the word, the PIP or the personal independence payments or their other benefits. So they are provided with funds specifically for transport. And at the moment, we don't charge anything for transport. And we're not obliged to, and very few other councils in the country provide free transport either.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the Willow's Edge about sufficient places if this was to go ahead.
We have looked very carefully at the availability of spaces because it's very difficult. It's a dynamic situation. Currently, there are quite a large number of vacancies in Birchwood, which we hope that most residents would be able to move to. But something we'll be keeping an eye on, and we're trying to make sure that in the event the home does close, which it may well not do because of the result of the consultation or because we find an alternative provider, then we'll do everything to make sure that residents are kept together as far as possible, and the staff too.
Thank you. And then if I can come then to Councillor Cottingham for the financial questions, please.
Yes, so it is quite a complex calculation with what the true cost of providing beds at Willow's Edge and also what we can pay on the commercial market. So currently the full cost of a bed per week at Willow's Edge is roughly £1,600, and on the open market is just over, it's roughly £1,150. So there's around about £450 per week saving, which we would have by going to a commercial third-party provider compared to how the costs which we're incurring.
And then
Okay, thank you.
Any question?
The inflation, yes, it will be above inflation, but it's still way below the cost of what it's costing us to provide the service. So we're not fully recovering all of our costs.
Okay, and is that because we haven't increased perhaps in previous years as much as we should have done, so now we're catching up?
Yes, that is the case. I've just been given the nod by Joseph.
Okay.
And then Councillor McRae, I think, has got one more comment for you, Councillor Stewart. You're getting a thorough answer here.
A couple of comments on the increase of fees for care homes. This is actually very similar to a proposal, well, more than a proposal put in by the last administration and the last budget, which we had official complaints about because there should have been consultation. So this is to redress that. So we're now going out to consultation on those fees, and the increase in fees we're proposing are as a result of the can you remind me, Paul, so the fair cost of
care,
which showed that the charges we were making were far less than the open market, and there will not be that many people directly affected because it just directs really the self-funders, which there's something around about 20.
Lovely, thank you for that, Councillor McRae. Were they your questions, Councillor Stewart?
Absolutely, and I wasn't asking them to try and catch anybody out. As I said, I think some of that information that you've just shared there, in particular, Councillor McRae, is really important that people know this, and it doesn't always come out in conversation. So I think it's really good that we're sharing this sort of information.
Yeah, and as I said, when the consultation goes live online, we'll make sure that they've got that context piece around them as well, Councillor Stewart.
Yeah,
so,
thank
you. Councillor Wollaston, please.
That's better. Sorry about that. Two questions. First one is just really a question of to the Section 151 officer, probably. Joseph, I believe I saw somewhere there was although obviously not, the Conservative team don't want to see an increase in council tax beyond what's necessary. I think I saw the governor has approved an increase to 5%, which I assume is plus the 2% for adult social care.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair, Councillor Williston. Obviously, we had the autumn statement yesterday. There was nothing in there specifically around council tax. The assumption within this paper is that we go on the previous government assumptions of kind of the 3% and the 2% council tax amounts that are there. I would expect we'll either get a policy paper in the next couple of weeks, which gives an inference as to what might be coming up, or we wait until the local government finance settlement. But you may have seen something. I've not seen anything that's specifically said what the government's intention is around council tax.
Okay, thank you. My main question now is that the Section 151 officers continuously said over the last couple of years that this financial year and next financial year are going to be the tricky ones for our finances. And after that, things improve quite radically. It just seems to me odd, whilst I support the idea of putting money back into our reserves at an appropriate time, it does seem to be rather odd to be taking £1 million to put into reserves at this particular year when we are in such financial problems.
Thank you. Is that a comment, Councillor Williston, or do you?
Sorry, it was a comment with a question at the end. Could you give me the reasons?
Well, I mean, I'll come to Councillor Cottingham in a bit too, but if you look at the in-year provision that we found ourselves at Q1 here, we were forecasting an £8.3 million overspend against a general reserve budget of 7.2. So if we hadn't have taken the action that we did over the summer, then I'm pretty sure Mr. Holmes would have been issuing a Section 114 notice or asking for one to be issued. So we have to build up our reserves to make sure that we can manage any in-year additional pressures that will come through, like we've seen this year and like your administration saw the previous year as well, particularly around adult social care and children's services. Councillor Cottingham, anything else to add?
Yeah, so I think obviously this financial year we're forecasting a deficit of roughly 3.3 million. So that would reduce our reserves to a dangerously low level, so roughly about 4.5 million. And I think best practice recommendation is having reserves around about the 5% mark. So we do need to build up to make sure we do have that headroom for any black swan event, anything which comes from left field, that we do have the ability to cope. I'm not so sure too many of us would be running our own personal budgets at that level of only having 3% of reserves.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Williston?
No, that's fine for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I'm going to come to the room. So Councillor Somner, please.
Thank you, Leader.
I think Councillor Marsh has got his hand up, Leader.
Yeah, I go through the main opposition group first, and then I go to the next.
My apologies.
Well, I think normally I go to the leaders actually. I think first. Sorry, Councillor Marsh, but everyone will get their chance to answer their question. Councillor Somner.
Happy to defer.
No, Councillor Somner, please. Yeah, I'm the chair.
No problem. Yeah, indeed you are. I recognise that. I'm happy to waive. Was my point. Yeah, thank you. Just a few observations and questions from me, really. I know in item 6, and it may come under 6.2, we don't appear to have that much listed as potential to increase revenue, other than those specified around things like council tax, for example, planning application fees. And I wonder whether this would actually be a better time to introduce that into consultation rather than waiting to the point of budget, if it's something that could be considered. Do you want me to just go through everything I've got and you'll pick it up in order? Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. With regards to the items in dog waste collections, grass cutting, both would come under the grounds maintenance contract, which is obviously something that's only just recently been awarded. I think we should recognise that, as far as I'm concerned, that would therefore have the potential to need a contract renegotiation, and how we recognise the potential risks that might bring forward. Restructuring of parking fees, Councillor McKinnon's already addressed. Reduction of HRWC opening times, that feels to me to be something which would underline and underpin the need that we as the previous administration continually maintained that there needs to be the continuation of a booking system. And you've mentioned, Leader, several times about the detail. I wonder whether that is something that should be included within the questioning so that members of the public, residents of the district, are fully aware of that as a potential. I am equally concerned about the situation with gully emptying. My concern would be something which I know is dear to your heart, Leader, with regards to flooding, especially in this area, but also something that you collectively, as did we, raise as an issue, which is road maintenance, and extra flooding on roads has the potential to increase the need for repair. So there's a continuation of what would initially seem to be quite a simplistic header of the knock-on effects that could drive through. And I hope that we can collate and have the means to collate all that within the consultation. I do think residents generally, and those out of the area, unfortunately, who won't be able to contribute, should be able to have that as a recognition that, you know, that there could be some quite serious negative impacts from something which I understand the need for looking at. Fundamentally, though, I wanted to end on and it's probably to Councillor Vick as under his community engagement hat, with regards to the consultation itself. Again, you've mentioned the level of detail that will go into the consultation that we don't have in the paper now, and I understand the summary that's provided. I do ask whether all members will have the opportunity to see that level of detail before it goes out, or whether it will purely be either a member or an executive decision as to what goes into the consultation. And finally, of that consultation, and again, this is something that I know members opposite in previous years have raised, is how that consultation is conducted, because you have repeatedly said to us that it cannot just be online. So I'd like some sort of assurances, please, some sort of commitments as to how that sort of consultation will be conducted under these circumstances. Thank you, Leader.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Somner. Councillor Vickers first on planning fees, please.
Yes, I mean planning fees and on the community engagement side, Leader, if I may just sort of say a little bit about that. So on planning fees, we don't have any discretion. These are set centrally. They were promised to come in April past, and your budget was set on the assumption that this would happen. Unfortunately, your government let us all down on that. But you know, we have now actually slightly earlier than we were predicting. As of the 12th of December, I think we get the increase commencing. And although I haven't actually read the details that were announced yesterday about the penalties that may also be tied into the increase. And as I said, I think the net impact of the planning fee increase might not be significant enough to be above the noise level in the paper we're looking at today, because of wider issues about the state of the construction industry, which has been hit by the increased inflation rates and is still struggling to find workers and supplies, which is really largely a post-Brexit problem, which we'll just have to live with going forward. So that's all I want to say about planning fees. But on community engagement, yes, I was very pleased that the Leader asked me to take on that. It's not a sort of portfolio that's existed before, and I'm still, to be honest, getting my head round it. But I'm very keen that we should make sure that the way we engage with communities does reach the hard to reach, both those that are not electronically enabled for various reasons, whether there's just not good enough broadband or whether they just haven't got the skills to use those methods, which is why we've reintroduced the neighbourhood notification letters for planning, and that we're also bringing back notice boards so that people in their communities can see in print with their naked eye, without access to a computer, broadly speaking, how to contact us. But when it comes to very specific things like the budget consultations, yes, I will be looking at how we can make sure that we do reach all kinds of communities effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis on GM, the grounds maintenance contract. I think more saying maybe just to note from Councillor Sumner on there that it might have a contract change rather than an answer needed on that. HWRC, the Household Waste Recycling Centre, sorry, HWRC. Councillor Gawley, please.
Yeah, so there's currently no plans to change the booking system as it is. This is just a tweak to the opening hours themselves of the site. Plenty of capacity still remains with those changes. Plenty of capacity remains at both of the facilities.
Thank you. Councillor Gaines, gully clearance, the highways function.
Thank you, Leader. So I can understand your concerns about bridges and gullies, but if I can give you an analogy of your own house, you have a number of gullies in your house. You have your toilet, your shower, your sink, etc. You don't clear those gullies every single year. What you do is you clear the gullies that actually need clearing. What we're looking at here is actually reducing the number of gullies we actually clear, but based on the ones that actually need to be cleared. And likewise with the bridges. So the bridges will be inspected as they all normally are. And with this new AI system, it will also allow us to examine those bridges, examine the road conditions on a more in sort of, sorry? Yeah, well, I was actually going to say a more forensic way. So actually those AI things will look at those conditions of the road, conditions of the bridges, conditions of the gullies, conditions of signs in a more forensic way. And therefore we'll be able to see very quickly where the actual things need to be, where the conditions are deteriorating and where we need to put the resources. And that's the important thing, is actually using the resources much better rather than actually more frequently. Okay. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. And then just on the consultation side, just to go a bit further with this one. So you've all got a copy of the poster. So if you could take that and get that on any local notice boards, if you need more copies of that, if you could speak to Martin Dunscombe, he can get you copies of that. Even myself, having been out canvassing at the weekend, was talking to residents on their doorsteps in their homes about the budget proposals. So we've got that direct face-to-face individual consultation, but also myself and Councillor Cottingham will go out across the district between now and the 11th of January, and we'll make that available. You know, we'll promote that as and when they happen to tell people where we're going to be able to answer questions for them as well, and to get any additional information. Thank you. Okay, I'm now coming to, and apologies, Councillor Marsh, but now coming to you, sir.
Well, I've had my hand up so long, I've forgotten what I was going to ask the council leader, but thank you. Luckily, I made a note. First of all, we sympathise with the position that the administration finds itself in, which is not of your making, nor even of the previous administration particularly, but as we know, an assault on local government by the government, which has been going on for many years, and a failure to provide funding or indeed the ability for councils to have the autonomy to actually raise the funding that they require. Anyway, we are in that position. In terms of the consultation, we're obviously very pleased to see that it is going out to consultation. Can I echo what Councillor McKinnon said? That's not a phrase you hear at every meeting in this chamber, but can I echo what he said about actually listening to the consultation, because it's the system falls into disrepute if you don't. And I'm reminded of the green bin tax, where 800 people submitted comments to the consultation carried out by the then council administration, of which about 95% were opposed to it, and they paid no attention whatsoever and ploughed ahead with it in exactly the form they were going to do it in the first place. So there's no point in doing a consultation if you don't listen. And I would urge the leadership to listen to what people say, and not on this question of always saying it won't affect frontline services. We hear this a lot from local authorities and from the government as well. And, you know, I mean, I think it's an easy thing to say, don't worry, it won't affect frontline services. Clearly, the care home is a frontline service. But also, if you've got an overflowing dog poo bin outside your house with the attendant health risks that of your children accidentally playing in it, and that spilling out all over the road and the pavement, that is a frontline issue for those people. And I think that we need to pay attention to people if they do come back, as Councillor McKinnon intimated and said, look, we're really not happy about the already not ideal service of bins of provision and emptying, and we're going to cut it further, then that will be extremely unpopular. And on the grass cutting, I realise that we're not talking about the detail tonight, but what we as Greens would say about that is if it's managed in such a way, and I'm pretty sure that the excellent head of countryside at the council wants to do it in this way, is managed in such a way to reduce the cutting while at the same time encouraging wildlife and biodiversity, which we all want to see as part of the council's strategy. If it's done like that, then we'd strongly support it. If it's just leaving everything to overgrow alongside the overflowing bins just to save money, then we wouldn't. So it's a question of how well it's managed, and I hope you'll take that on board. My final point, it's customary at a time when the council is making cuts for members to decide to award themselves an increase in allowances. I would argue strongly on behalf of the only group that has consistently voted against this practice that we would hope not to see at the very moment that you're telling members of the public, I'm sorry, we're going to cut back these services, that we all give ourselves a nice increase in allowances. So I'm hoping that won't be happening this winter, because the timing would be very unfortunate, to put it mildly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Just to come back, I think more comments, but thank you for the comments. In terms of the overall funding, so I sit on a body which is the Strategic South East Leaders body, which is called CECIL. So that represents all councils in the South East of England. We were meant to be having a meeting with the local government finance minister, and then the Prime Minister made him the housing minister. So the next day that meeting got cancelled. However, I'm pleased to say that the new minister, Simon Hoare, I think, who used to be a Oxfordshire County Councillor, actually, so does understand local government, or has lived through local government. We've got him coming to our CECIL conference on the 9th of December, so that we can put forward the case for longer term finance settlements for local authorities across the country. Just in respect of Frontline, I think I referenced Frontline as being the £7.5 million of cuts aren't Frontline. The ones that are being consulted on because they are Frontline cuts, and we understand that. In terms of, we want to absolutely listen to the consultation, but we also have a legal obligation to set a balanced budget. There is not one thing in this list of proposals that we as Liberal Democrats would want to see happening. This isn't an ideological administration come in and said, we're cutting this, and we're cutting this because we don't like it. We are putting forward proposals to consult on, which we think do the least harm out of other stuff that we've seen as members as well, to make sure that we can continue to be financially secure as a council, that then enables us to have that long-term financial stability to protect the most vulnerable. So it's all coming from a good place, Councillor Marsh, in terms of the reasons for it. But thank you for your comments. And now come to Councillor Abbs, please. And then Councillor Culver. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, Leader. Predictive failure, Denise. That's, I think, the word you were looking for the AI when it goes around and scans the road. But anyway, just the future. The other thing is, if I may comment on it, this business about car parking charges. I don't know why everybody just assumes you have to put the car parking charges up to increase revenue. The way you deal with your car parks and how you get revenue from the use of the space, there's lots of options. So the consultation is very timely to examine those different ways and make sure they actually help West Berkshire, not just, we're going to bung the price up, but that will be a result of the consultations. Anyway, that's by the by. I was looking through the report, and obviously I did see it previously in a slightly earlier form some weeks back, but looked at it with fresh eyes, I guess, today. There are a few things that jumped out at me this time that I really would like to highlight to the administration. First of all, if I look at some of the charts and graphs, especially chart 1.2, if you want to follow me on this one, the adult social care annotized adults,
That word that begins with A that means adults, and annually. So if we look at those charts, I mean, there's a lot of data in that chart, which is always good to have a picture rather than just words. But has anybody noticed how the start and end dates don't generally align to the months? Has anybody else noticed that every March we're at one point, and then somehow the next month we're significantly higher? And every year we have this jump.
I think Councillor Mr. Holmes, can you explain that for me? He's given us the explanation before.
Oh, good. There's one. Thought it would be.
Yeah, just on that, it's because it's annualised in the new year when inflation, for example, and contract increases go up. So it becomes a new increase base with those costs included, but annualised out. Whereas if it wasn't annualised, you would see exactly as a more gradual increase.
Yeah, and I just pretty much understood what you said, but this is meant to be part of the pool, information that backs up why we need a public consultation. Our best will in the world, I'm not sure this is the best way to present information to be easily absorbed. So all I would encourage is that we look at that and try and find a way of presenting it that is actually closer to reality than this technical numbers here. There are some of the things that I picked up. So the Q1, the question I had about Q1 jumping the numbers jumping has been answered. I did notice that the social grant increasing 8.4% between 24, 25, 25, 26, and then flatlines after that. Always difficult to understand a flatlining anything because that generally doesn't.
Can you just say where you are in the papers, please, Councillor Abbs?
Oh gosh, social care grant increasing. It's back up in the list of numbers, back up on the page. Sorry, I just made notes of when I read through it rather than if you.
Mr. Holmes,
table 1.2.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was just back on there. So.
And then to answer the flat line.
Yeah, to answer the flat lining. So you see that lots of the numbers in the future years we flatline because that's our base assumption from government funding. So until we get a longer model, that's our latest numbers. And you see in the announcement yesterday in the autumn statement, the implied increases for kind of non-protected government areas is most likely to be a real terms decrease. So we just flatline to assume that to recognise that longer term government position.
Yeah, lovely. So I kind of assume something like that, but when I look at this, if I've done my maths correctly, costs will have gone up by 37.83% since April 2020 to April 2024, according to chart 1.2. Annualized clients have only risen by 15.87 by March 2025. That's predicting a bit into the future. So that seems to tell me that actually inflation is the number one nasty thing that you've got going on. Yes, increasing people. Well, adults, social care, I thought we all assumed that we were getting older and therefore would need more care. So I would have expected that. Where am I going with all this? Because there's a bit more I can talk on about as well. And it's the accuracy with which the forecast builds on year and year. And I had here, sorry, bear with me 1 second. I just lost it now. Oh, yeah, that's right. In 2021-22, we're about 8.7% error. Then it goes up in the next year to a 14% error. And as this new administration came to power, it was actually a 22% error. So all of the information we're using to base our budgets on and to do our forecasting to therefore know what cuts we need to make and so on and so forth, if we get further and further away than what's going to actually happen, the reserves you're going to need are going to be ever bigger. And so in other words, I think we need to put some real focus on trying to get the error back down to a more manageable amount. And that will help with the amount of reserves that we need. And in reality, if I've read this properly, there are some quite large estimates for what's going to happen in not just in adult social care, but in children care going forward. But when I look at some of the charts themselves, they don't seem to be quite on track. Now, between now and February, when you actually have done the consultation, all this comes back, you'll have a few more months worth of data. So I'm really hoping that when it comes to it, you'll actually have more money in the back, just like the Chancellor just had. There'll be a bit more money and you won't have to cut as far, because I can see a £3 or £4 million worth of possible inaccuracy in what I'm looking in the chart. So I really wanted to give the message out in this little, I suppose, speech now, is that yes, you're consulting, or yes, we're consulting, but that's not immediately panic, because things may yet change. Okay.
Yeah. I think maybe some wishful thinking, but we're keeping it in our back pocket, Councillor Abs. And then any other questions? Sir?
Yeah, there was really. And the question would be, would you agree that it seems at the top level, and I think we've heard this already, that Westminster is the people that have underfunded West Berkshire residents, and it comes down fundamentally to we're having to deal with a variable number that the law says we have to take care of, and yet we get a fixed amount that we either raise ourselves or get from the government. And those two things, well, it's why Ed Davey himself went out there and talked about a new adult social care model, because it doesn't work.
Okay, so I don't think I'm being too political here by saying that the LGA has called for longer term finance settlements for councils, and that's a cross-party body. So I think we're all in agreement as councillors that we would like to see more secure funding from central government, whichever government's in party. But thanks for your comments and questions.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Councillor Culver.
Thank you very much, Leader. With regard to paragraph 5.5, it talks about a hard reset of business rates and the potential of losing £10 million. Could you just give me a bit more of an explanation about what is actually meant by that?
Yeah, Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, through you. Yeah, so Councillor Culver, that's where the government back in 2013 allowed us to retain a certain level of business rates that we collect. So we collect around about £90 million worth of business rates. We're forecast to retain so 28, 29 million pounds. However, beneath that, the government started us at assuming that we'd be able to retain about 18 million pounds. And as every year's gone up, the business rate baseline the amount of business rates that we've been able to retain has gone up, because business rates have grown in the local area. And also we get to retain higher levels of business rates on things that are linked to energy schemes, for example, solar farms. The government, through some of their previous consultations around fair funding, have kept saying, well, what we're going to do is say, well done, West Berkshire, your business rate baseline has grown now, your new baseline will be £28 million. And if they did that, we wouldn't get to keep that extra level of growth. So that is the risk for us, is they give us a new baseline at the higher level we're at the moment.
Okay, so and that would be 10 million. That's not just speculative, that's based on...
That would, the baseline assessment they have at the moment is, I think it's about £18.7 million. So it's around about £10 million. I would expect if that fair funding review did come in, you would hope there'd be some sort of transitional period. At the moment, the MTFS, we are assuming more and more that that fair funding review will not occur until much later now than we originally did.
Okay, thank you for that. And in one of the charts, it talks about discharge fund for adult social care going down to zero in the next 4 years, I think. Why do we think that would be zero? I think it was 25, 26.
Yeah, Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, again, thank you through you, Chair. Again, I suppose it's similar to previous questions. That's the latest assumption we have from central government. So they gave for 2023 some indicative numbers for 24, 25 as well. We assume that starts to fall away. So that could be too pessimistic assumption into future years. But again, that will depend on government's thinking around discharge from the NHS into the local social care sector and what they want to do around that. So it could be too pessimistic, but that's our assumption.
Okay. Right. Best to err on the side of caution, I suppose. And then just finally from me, we have got a special scrutiny commission budget meeting on the 6th of February. Is there any likelihood that the results of this consultation would be ready in time for that meeting for us to have a look at them?
Yeah, well, obviously partly depending on how engaged the community are in terms of the workload around that, but having not gone through this process before, I'll let the officers answer it. Thanks.
Yes, so the consultation would have closed. We will have pulled those responses together. We have executive 2 days afterwards. So the consolidation of the responses will certainly be in the executive pack. So even if it might be a to follow paper a couple of days late for the Scrutiny Commission, the information will be there for the Scrutiny Commission.
Great, thank you very much for that.
Excellent. I don't see any more hands. I think nearly everyone asked a question tonight. So Councillor Brooks in seconding and reserving your right. I'll come to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Leader. And Leader, may I say that you've allowed an awful lot of comment, questions, debate, discussion, and that's refreshing. And I think everybody in the chamber probably, I hope, and at home appreciates that. No, you said, what did you say? You'd be home by 5:30. I come to quite a few points, if I may. For Councillor McKinnon, yeah, I mean, to give you lots and lots of detail about the 7.3 million, all I will do is give you assurance that it will all be in the budget papers, as I think has been the practice for many years, and another assurance that dozens and dozens and dozens of potential savings, efficiencies, cuts, whatever you want to call them, were looked at in this room, and many, many, many of them were discarded. Nobody, any politician wants to come here and make cuts, but we've faced, since we became the administration, a bit of a perfect storm. The leader mentioned earlier, and I think Councillor Cottingham too, we were at one stage looking at £8.7 million of overspend in year. That's down to 3.3 million now. And you know, I do, through the work we're doing, through the Finance Review Panel, hope to get that down further, so that we're not going into these, what we used to call, perhaps we still call, the prudent reserve. The prudent reserve used to be 5% of the whole budget. And now we're talking about going below the 5% in order to get through this year. That's tough. Things are tough. The budget at 14 million, I don't think, from memory, the previous administration had that level of pressure. They might have done once or twice. Maybe I was taking my 3-year holiday at the time, Chairman. Yeah, but you know, it's a tough place to be, and therefore you have to make decisions. I don't want to consult on anything that could be at all harmful to the public, but as you said, Leader, you do things that will cause the minimum harm, and I believe this package achieves that. Councillor Burke has asked me more than once, and I'm sure he's going to ask me again, you know, transformation programs don't necessarily give savings. We're already, I said already, we are finding savings, Councillor Burke, through transformation, through changing working practices, and I expect that to continue. How many millions that'll be, it's too early to say, but we've saved already in this year hundreds of thousands of pounds through transformative processes in various areas. Councillor Wollaston said things will improve quite dramatically, radically, he said, in the year after next. I do so hope he's right. We have to model in here that they do on the face of what we know already, but what are the uncertainties? There will be a general election probably by this time next year. Who knows what will happen then with an ongoing Conservative government, a Liberal Democrat government, or a Labour government, which is just uncertain times. So I don't think any of us can say it's going to get easier until it does. And furthermore, in replenishing the reserves, you do have to start somewhere, Leader. And £1 million is not actually putting a lot back after what we might have to take this year out of our prudent reserve and what was taken last year. So you really got to try and building up some reserves to be able to call on. Somebody mentioned the household waste recycling centres. In fact, I just want to thank Councillor Abbs, because I said to him when he was portfolio holder, can we increase the number of slots in a given hour? I believe we have done. And so even by reducing some hours, I think we've got the capacity up already. But finally, I think really, we are not, you know, somebody said we're not panic. Well, we're not panicking. We could have done, but we're not. And it's tough, but it's toughest on our staff.
It's toughest on our staff. It's toughest on our staff who suddenly say, we need to spend some money, we need to go to the financial review panel, and it's going to be tough to get that through. And it sometimes comes back and says, no, this ain't easy for our staff. We as politicians find it tough, but they are wrestling with this every day, every moment of the day. And please don't think it goes unnoticed. I think, Leader, you always end up with difficult decisions you don't want to take. This is for consultation, as you rightly say. We listen to what comes back. We hope to improve matters in the interim, as somebody said they might. It's a work in progress, sir, and the best we can do at this stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooks. Okay, so executive. So I'm going to ask. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Councillor Cottingham. So as the proposer, you get the final comments.
I can't really follow that, really.
Excellent. So moving on to the recommendation. So only one requires a vote. The second part is to note, but just for clarity. So for the executive to approve a consultation exercise on the specific budget proposals identified in the report at paragraph 5.25, and for the executive to note the report and consider the implications of this for the final budget papers in February next year. Can I see a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you. That is unanimous. And with that, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you to members of the public, members of staff from Willow's Edge for attending. And I bring this meeting to a close.